This episode of The Candid Frame is brought to you by the Charcoal Book Club. Their carefully curated selections reflects the best in contemporary photography, and all for a reasonable price. And they are delivered directly to your doorstep each month. They offer free shipping to the US, Canada, and the UK. It's subsidized elsewhere. It's a great way to begin or expand your photo library. Join the club at charcoalbookclub.com today. And remember to use the promo code TheCandidFrame at checkout. What do you want to say with your photographs? Assuming that you want more than to make a pretty picture, you have to understand why making specific photographs is so vital to you. Some photographers are driven to share the beauty of the natural world with an audience that might otherwise take it for granted. A photojournalist wants to tell a story that they believe needs to be told. A portrait photographer makes photographs of a community that they have come to love and respect. Understanding the why not only helps to define the photography, but provides the inspiration to persevere when the inevitable ups and downs occur. Those obstacles can become all the more challenging when the themes and ideas you are exploring are about yourself. Dana Stirling's project, Why Am I Sad?, is a photographic project of self-exploration that includes not only her struggles with mental illness, but those of her mother, and how it impacted the entire family, both then and now. The images are not cliched stock imagery of sadness and depression, but beautiful and even funny musings of what it means to live with lifelong mental illness. The photographs prove that a life filled with pain and difficulty can inspire art that is wonderful to both see and feel. This is Ibarian X, and this is The Candid Frame. Well, Dana, welcome to The Candid Frame. I'm really looking forward to having a chance to talk with you.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited for this.
Yeah, your work, particularly this body of work in Why Am I Sad, is really kind of fascinating, and it resonates with me for a variety of different reasons, which we'll probably get into. But you know, at the heart of it is this idea of depression, mood, but one of the things that really kind of struck me is when I think about photographs that's sort of reflective of that. I was surprised by a lot of your pictures. I could see that as an individual photograph, how they could be reflective of sadness, if not depression. But also there are other images where if I was just looking at the image as a standalone shot, I wouldn't necessarily see that.
Right.
And I think it's kind of interesting is that, all our images come from somewhere. And as you started taking a look at these photographs that you had made over the years, because these span over a period of time, what allowed you to sort of take a look at these images beyond looking at them as, aesthetically a very pleasing singular photograph, and come to an understanding that they were expressing something about who you were and how you felt and how you were experiencing life?
Right, that's a good question. First, I'm curious to know why you were surprised, but we can talk about that in a few minutes. But I think for me, kind of coming from academia and like having my undergrad and then my MFA, I feel like I've always kind of been conditioned to think of projects, right? Like a body of work is a project, and then you potentially move forward from it or you continue it for years, but it's always like very contained. But for me, I've always felt that my work was very, it didn't have like a linear structure to it. It didn't have a beginning and an end. Every photo I took always kind of went back to the same theme and the same ideas and the same concept of just like the family, trauma, the identity, who I am as a person. So I just never felt that I could really constrain myself into projects. And it kind of took me a long time to understand that. Yeah. All of my images kind of are intertwined in a way. So yes, in a way, the project is very contained because it's a book and it only has, a specific amount of images in it. But I think it's just almost like a chapter in this broader story that I'm telling of who I am as a person, and just how I use photography to not only talk to other people and communicate, but almost try and figure who I am as a person. So I think for this specific book, creating it was more kind of came out of a need. I was in a kind of a bad mental place and just a bad place as an artist. I felt a little stuck. I felt very unaccomplished in many ways, even though I had success and I've been doing things, and I was doing my MFA and everything, but I just felt very stuck in many ways. So when I decided to do the project, I just decided to really frame it in a very specific way where I'm challenging myself to, quote unquote, answer this question, why am I sad? So almost in a way, the concept of the work came while still making images, and slowly kind of grew into this project. But I think in a way, the question of why am I sad is something that has followed me for years and will probably follow me beyond this book. So I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, I mean, I live with major depressive disorder. I was diagnosed late in life. And when I looked at your photographs, there were a lot of photographs that I felt like I saw a lot of my photographs in there in terms of how I would be reacting to something and seeing it sort of aesthetically. But I couldn't help but think that, well, the way that I have walked through life informs the kinds of photographs that I make. And I can't say that I was conscious of those issues informing my reaction to scenes, how I composed them, how I made the photographs. And it was really kind of interesting that at some point you were sort of conscious of that to some degree, right? But I think it seems I sort of separate the sort of the creation of the photographs where it's much more spontaneous, reactive sort of thing. And then later on looking at the individual photographs and then a collection of photographs and finding meaning in them. And I think that everybody makes photographs. They don't have to be depressives, but it's coming from who they are and what they've experienced, but they aren't necessarily able to bridge that gap to find the sort of the meaning that all that work is capturing. So for me, I'm kind of fascinated about your journey in terms of discovering that for yourself and being able to put, these disparate photographs together in a way that makes sense to you and makes sense to the people who end up taking a look at it.
I think for me, the pivotal point was I was on the West Coast visiting back in 2019. It was the first time I went to the West Coast, and it was kind of a weird time for me. We were going through immigration stuff, and I just had a lot of challenges. I just felt, like I said, kind of lost, and I was kind of coming from a very dry spell of not taking photos for many months, and just the anxiety of not making work made it even harder to make work, because now I was like, am I a real artist because I'm not making work, right? You always hear these great artists of how they work in the studio, constantly making. And here I am just for months not doing anything. And I just felt very almost crippled by my anxiety for photography, but the need to photograph was so strong. Yeah. But I couldn't photograph. So I was kind of stuck in this cycle. So we were in the West Coast, and it was just so remarkably beautiful. There was a lot of freedom in the coast, and I just felt inspired. It's the first photo that I put in the book, and I put it first for a reason, because it's the purple flowers with the red, driveway reflector. And when I saw it, it was just it was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen, right? This red with this purple flower, the contrast, but then also the feeling of something being out of place. Yeah. The driveway hazard symbol versus this beautiful nature of just taking over, and then the very delicate hazard reflector that kind of fell down and kind of started blending in with the flowers. So I took that photo, and it was just like something opened in my heart. Like I was like, yes, photography, this is what I'm meant to do. Like this is my calling, this is my passion, this is who I am as a person, is to take photos. And it kind of reminded me again why photography is so important to me, because I was finally able to capture everything I felt with one photo. And I think for me, after taking that photo, I started really thinking about my struggle and why I'm feeling this way, and being more candid and more open about like my mental health and how it's been affecting me, and kind of being more open about it. And I think after that photo, I started really talking about how do I make a project out of this feeling, this heaviness of feeling like I want to photograph, but it's hard to photograph, and why. So that's really where things kind of shifted for me. And that's kind of where the project, quote unquote, started, I think.
Yeah, what I'm getting from what you're saying is that the photographs, you looked at the photographs you made and that's how I'm feeling. Yeah. Rather than just looking at them in terms of composition, in terms of light and shadow and color, that was at the heart of what you were pursuing. Right.
I think for me, like sometimes, like you said, now I'm much more aware of the process of photographing certain things and themes and like the smile faces and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. I'm very more like conscious about it. But I think for me, when I take a photo, I don't think, oh, I'm sad today, so this photo represents it. But I can only see beauty in something if I'm feeling a certain way, or if I'm, right? So
yeah, no, I get it.
I gravitate towards these things just so naturally, and I almost feel like they search me the same way that I'm searching them, and we kind of find each other. And it's just a perfect moment where we both are in the same place at the same time, and then I'm able to capture it. So I think a lot of the images I took were just came very naturally to me, because it was just something that I found that I resonated with, even if I didn't fully understand why at the moment.
Yeah.
And then when, looking back and specifically working on the book and the project, it really helped me really understand how everything kind of tied together, and how I went back to the same things over and over.
Yeah, it's quite the irony that there's sort of these feelings that normally we want to sort of get away from and try to reverse, become the very things that allow us to be able to make beautiful things and make photographs. Yeah. It's somehow that it's accepting and embracing it rather than trying to fight it, is what really allows you to say something and express something personally in photographs. What do you think sort of, helped you to sort of embrace that process? Because there's a lot of resistance to it, like you said, especially the concerns about self-doubt, insecurity, whether you're a good photographer or whether you have anything worthy of saying. That's a lot. It's a big boulder to have to push up the hill. What helps you to sort of move through that negativity and to be not just create photographs, but to do it consistently?
I think just allowing yourself the time to feel sad for me was crucial in the end. Because I think without the low parts, you don't have the high parts. And I think just allowing yourself to be a human, right? Yeah. So we're not machines, we're not like robots. We're going to have good days and bad days, and I think that's okay. But I think if you're more aware of it, you kind of allow yourself to take the time you need to take a step back and think and relax and just, not make art, but almost like also pushing yourself to make art because it's important to you, and not allowing yourself to kind of dwell into this self-pity, sad cycle that you can go into, which is very toxic and can be, for me, it created a situation where I didn't photograph for months. And, I'm just allowing myself to be okay with not photographing, but still trying to push myself to be active in any way I can. But it's hard, it's challenging, and I think a lot of artists can feel the same way. It's hard to apply to calls for entries and try and stay active and be a part of the community, even if you're feeling down. It's just something that you kind of had to learn how to balance, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I had to learn that very lesson myself. Some days I'm just having a terrible day, can't focus, can't get things done. And rather than beating myself up for not being able to do it, it's like, it's one of those days. So just walk away from the desk and just go, it's just not going to get done. It's going to be there tomorrow. Right.
And I think also like embracing the fact that this sadness is a part of who I am. And I think the moment I allowed myself to kind of embrace it was the moment that I, funny enough, like opened up. Like I really felt that I got even more creative. I wanted to photograph more because suddenly I didn't feel guilt. I felt like, it's okay. I'm sad. Okay, that's fine. Let's move on. Like it's a part of who I am. It's a part of my, family history and trauma. And it is who I am. So it's going to be there regardless. So if I'm going to talk about it and embrace it and make work about it, it just helps me not feel so alone in the process. I can share it with others and hear their stories and kind of bridge the gap between feeling very isolated and, reaching out to the community. And I think this is why the book was very important to me, because it was a way to kind of talk to people and show them this sadness that I've been carrying around for years, So that's why it was kind of important for me to make it.
The motif of the yellow smiley face that became famous in the 60s sort of is a linchpin of the book. It also serves as part of the cover, but also it appears several times throughout the book. Tell me about that symbol and why it plays an important part in the project and in the work.
So in the beginning, I kind of found a few smile faces kind of randomly. I wasn't searching for them or anything. One of the first ones was the smiley balloon in, the orange fall tree that was kind of deflated. And then I also have the smiley in the graveyard. Those were kind of a few of the first ones. And like you said, it has this irony to it. It's almost like mimicking like this idea of happiness and what it's supposed to be. But it was taken in like during COVID. So it was like back in 2020. So, life was very different. We almost forgot how different it was, right? So a lot of isolation and sadness and just like feeling very deflated. And then these smileys kept kind of creeping up on me and just like popping up every once in a while, almost trying to like make me happy. So I took them in the beginning with more of a naive, oh my God, that's such a whimsical thing to find, right? But then slowly I found more and more and more. And I was never searching for them specifically. I just found them all randomly. And then they started feeling like they were mocking me somehow. Like they were like taunting me and almost like saying, you're not happy. Like, who are you fooling? Right. So it almost became like a game between me and them. Like who can find who and how many of them are going to be a part of my life. So I didn't start the project deliberately searching for them. It did start with like this fun irony, but it kind of became more sinister, I think, as the project moved forward. They became more daunting. They felt less happy. They felt more like artificial, right? This idea of like the grin, the happiness, it's just like iconic, right? So it's like a happy face. And if you see it, you should feel happy. And how dare you not feel happy when you see them, right? So it kind of became this thing that I like, the balance between the good, the bad, the happy, and the sad. I think I kind of embraced it with the cover because I think, for me, I didn't think there was a photo that necessarily represented the project. I didn't think there was a photo that was like, this is the photo, right? Yeah. So I knew I didn't want to do a photograph on the cover, and I wanted it to be a little different because I wanted it to feel like the way you feel when you're sad, right? There's an external person that you present to the world, but inside there's a lot more emotions, and it's a deeper, heavier person, right? So the cover is kind of trying to play on this idea of how simple it is to take a happy face, and with a small tear, it's suddenly upside down and it's a sad face.
Yeah.
And just the idea of the mask that we're wearing, and kind of just have this duality between who I am as an artist and my emotions and this heavy subject matter of mental health and sadness.
You know, you've talked about that your own mother lived with depression, and that early on photography became sort of an outlet for you, or a place that you could retreat to. Talk to me about those early photographs and about using photography as sort of a coping mechanism.
So my parents were originally from London, and then they moved in '88 to Israel after some anti-Semitic attacks on like the local community and the synagogue. So I was the first child, I was the first person in the family who was not British, right? Because I was born in a different country. So I think in many ways I always felt like an immigrant, even though I was born in the country, because my parents were so English. Their just mannerism was so English and so different from like this Middle Eastern culture. So I always felt like I didn't really belong inside the house and outside of it, right? Like just nothing felt like me, nothing felt welcoming, nothing felt like I could relate to, right? Yeah. I wasn't English enough, I wasn't Israeli enough, I wasn't this. I just didn't feel that I could really connect or relate to anything. So I always felt like there was a little bit of a gap between me and my family just from the get-go. With that, and then my mother with her clinical depression, eating disorders, and just who she is as a person, right? It was very challenging to grow up in the house. So I think in many ways I escaped to my room because I just I didn't know how to deal with this thing, this beast of, someone who's mental health challenges. And then my dad also escaped. So everyone kind of escaped to their own little bubble. So I found myself for many hours just by myself in my room. And, in the beginning, I tried to be a writer, but I didn't know how to write properly. I couldn't express myself with words. So I started playing around with my little pocket, digital camera just around the house. And it kind of slowly grew into something that I really liked and really enjoyed. So it kind of started slowly, and then I did my undergrad, and it became more of less than a hobby, than more professional, right? So in my undergrad, I started understanding why photography was such a powerful tool for me, because I was able to capture this feeling of heaviness in this house that I just felt so disconnected in. And I used still life as a way to almost do portraits, right? I didn't want to take photos of my family members because I couldn't, right? I couldn't connect to them in that way. So suddenly random objects became almost as a replacement for all these people and feelings. So that's how I kind of connected to still life, and I've built on that feeling of just using still images and still life to just talk. It's just my language. It's how I communicate with people, because I just couldn't. I didn't have anyone to talk to. I couldn't express all this to my mother because, she's dealing with her own challenges, and she didn't really understand how it affected us, right? I think, that's how I started. And I think it's just been a coping mechanism in a way, to really process these emotions. Instead of writing in a diary, I just took photos, and it just kind of started building slowly.
Yeah. The Chico Review is a 6-night retreat exclusively dedicated to the world of photo books. Founded by the Charcoal Book Club, This annual event is a unique opportunity for you to network with some of the industry's best publishers, editors, and photographers to help facilitate publishing your photographic projects. The event includes valuable networking opportunities, critique sessions, and for one photographer, a prize that includes worldwide publishing of their project through the Charcoal Book Club. This year's event will include the participation of photographers including Sally Mann, Sage Sawyer, Mark Powers, Dana Luxembourg, and Todd Heido, among many others. Find out more by visiting chicoreview.com. It's really kind of fascinating the way that you describe, still lives as being sort of a voice for you. Because when I look through your work, there's a consistent voice throughout. When I look at the pictures that you took of your grandparents' apartment or their neighborhood or that abandoned Israeli amusement park, or even the stuff that you're doing with the found family photographs, it's like there's a through line through all of it. The way that not just the way that it looks, but also in terms of the way that it feels. And it's really kind of fascinating to see that kind of consistency, even with the variety of subject matter that you're photographing, or that you're putting together in the case of these found photographs. Tell me about gaining. It's one thing to find voice, but it's another thing to feel confident about your voice. How did your undergrad being in school help you in terms of that?
So I think two major things happened in my undergrad. The first was I learned black and white photography, traditional, darkroom photography. So funny enough, I hate black and white personally. Like I just can't take good black and white photos. I don't hate black and white. I hate my own black and white photography. That's what I meant.
Okay.
Sorry. I don't want, pitchforks coming after me. But I think learning that basic understanding of black and white and how to take a photo that just looks with all the tones of it, and being conscious about how far you want to push an image with blacks and whites and grays. So I think that was very crucial for me, because the moment I switched to color, the world opened up to me. Like, color is my biggest love. I don't think I could photograph the way I photograph without color. It's such an important part of my work. So yeah. I think kind of learning that in undergrad was really crucial for me. But I think another important thing was I learned about Japanese photographer Takashi Yasumura, and he has been in the back of my mind this entire time. He is, every time people ask me, like, who's your inspiration, he is the first and only person I say, because his work, Domestic Scandals, has been so inspirational to me and helped me so much. It's almost like he made that work and gave me almost like a Bible to follow. Like, his sensitivity to his parents' home and the way he photographed still life in that project was just so eye-opening to me, because it was exactly what I was trying to do. And then I saw it in a book and it just clicked. So his work has been really important to me. And I always think about that project. So in many ways, it's been guiding me kind of through my photography. Because it's just, I always think about that book and how it made me feel. And I just want other people to feel the way I felt when I first opened that book. So that's kind of the two things that happened in my undergrad that really helped me shape kind of my aesthetic and just the things I'm interested in a very meaningful way, I think.
One of the things that goes along with, living in a household where there's mental illness is that the secrecy that goes along with it, and the shame that's associated with it. And, and making the choice to become open about it, especially through art and to, a larger public. That's a big hurdle to sort of get over. And until you're able to do that, the work either isn't created or suffers as a result. Tell me about that part of the sort of the struggle and the challenge?
I think you completely nailed it. Like the idea of feeling ashamed has been so crucial to who I am as a person. It shaped me from a young age. And it took me many, many years to kind of overcome that. And I think having distance, physical and mental distance from my family and the house and the country, like I'm just in a different place completely, right? So I'm over the sea, like having that distance has really opened my eyes to who I am as a person, almost detached from all of that.
Mm-hmm.
I still have guilt about being so far away, being so detached, not feeling connected. But I think it was important for me to do that because it was for my own mental health. I had to put it first in a way. Yeah, I think the secrecy and just like not talking about it is what created this toxic environment in the house. You're not supposed to tell anyone. Don't talk to people about it. How dare you talk about it? Me and my sister haven't talked for years now because of this idea of like sharing personal family matter in the world with other people who are strangers, and how dare you kind of expose our family to this. And to me, it's just like, I'm not exposing them, I'm just exposing myself, right? Because all of these things have shaped me and changed me, and they're just a part of who I am as a person. So in order for me to be true to myself and true to my art, I have to talk about it.
Yeah.
And I think, now with the book, like I shared it with my dad, and I think for many years he never really understood my work. And I think when he read the statement about the book, it clicked for him. And I think he was emotional about how he realized how it affected me as a person. Because again, we never talked about it. It's just something that happened. It was just there. It's like, yeah, your mother is sleeping all day. She's sad. It's fine. Just let her be. So nobody really talked about it, but it really did affect all of us in different ways. I think it's just not talking about it really created a crutch.
Yeah.
For everyone to they couldn't move forward, I think, in many ways. So I think for me, it's just been very healing to just be like, it's okay. Everyone's has challenges, and everyone has family dynamics that maybe they're not proud of. And I'm not alone in this. So I think sharing the project and talking to people, I've realized even more that more people can connect to this than I could have ever imagined. So I think there's definitely room for this conversation because a lot of people are feeling this in their own way.
And what have been some of the surprising responses that you've heard about in reaction to the book?
I think a lot of people, especially artists, I think, really feel like they resonate with the work and they connect to the work. I think they appreciate the openness of talking about it, because sometimes even if they don't want to talk about their own struggle, it makes them feel better when other people do, so they don't feel alone in their own struggle. But I think also in many ways, a lot of people kind of think the work is too sad, not commercial, not sellable in many ways. It's almost like I got a little bit of pushback, I think, from the art world as like a whole. I think it's hard for people. I think it's not comfortable. It's not easy. It's not, it's also not a very straightforward project about depression. I think it's more, what's the word that I'm looking for? Like metaphorical, right? It's not a photo of a sad person in the corner of a dark room, right? It's not like illustrated in that way. I think it's hard for some people to read the work. So yeah, I've had kind of both aspects of that. Yeah.
Yeah, the images are much more subtle, right? They're not that heavy-handed when you're talking about these themes, which is something that I like and something that I appreciate, because I hate cliche, especially about this subject. And there's more than enough stuff out there, right? You talked about, people's looking at the work and going, it's not commercial, they can't sell it, blah, 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 which basically is about rejection. And you did a wonderful project about rejection where you took all these sort of rejection letters you had gotten over the years and you actually made it into a piece of work. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I did that back in my undergrad. I took a book, just like a side little book workshop. And the assignment was to make an unconventional book. At the time, I was working to do my artist visa. So I was kind of just like in the grind of everything, just submitting, collecting my my portfolio, building everything. So I was kind of very invested in it. So that was the only thing on my mind at the time. So I decided to kind of make lemonade out of lemons type of thing. So I took 13 rejection letters for, good luck. And I used a free, because I was a student at the time and had no money. So I used free resources from Home Depot, their color swatches from their, because they always have this amazing names to them, right? Like Oceanside, like they're so promising, they're so happy, they're so just like inviting and warm, right? And then I'm kind of slapping on them these rejections. So yeah, I made them into a fan book because I wanted it to be circular with this, like there is an end and a beginning, but not really. You can kind of read it however you want. It's not so much about being a book in a traditional way. It's more like like you said, a kind of art piece. And then I emailed each of the 13 people who I selected for my book. And, funny enough, it kind of got picked up by one of them and went kind of big on the internet. And I always say it's funny. It's one of my most successful projects to date, which is always great that your rejection book is your most successful work, right? It just went into like really good publications and stuff like that. And I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. So I think when I did that, artists were just like amazed that I did it, right? Like they were like, oh my God, thank you for doing this. It's not every day that we talk about it. And I think now there's much more of a common thread, like kind of theme that people are talking about rejections and just feeling rejected from the world of art. But for me, it's always been a big part of who I wanted to be as an artist on social media and just in general. When I talk to people, I want to be very open about the up and down, right? I'm happy to share my success, but I also want to share a lot of my, rejections and hardships because it's not perfect and it's not all roses and we all get rejected and it's okay. It's a bummer. It's hard for the ego and it's hard for us as artists because we really do put, our hearts on our sleeves. But I think it's important to talk about it because I think it's also important for organizations to know that we're not just robots. We're not just an email. We're real people behind these rejections and it affects us. It hurts us. And we, I think, should strive for them to do it better, make it a better place for everyone. So I think the more we talk about it, the more we can see change, hopefully, in just the whole process of artists and organizations and submissions. And so that's something that's really important to me, just to talk about it. So, yeah.
Did that project create a shift in terms of how you see and how you react to rejection?
Every time I get a rejection, I was like, okay, maybe I'll make another book. Round 2, let's start again. Like I try to make, fun of it, but like some rejections obviously are harder to take. Some rejections are just feel more personal, like something that you really wanted and you kind of got rejected from it. It really stings. So I think it didn't change the way I think of rejection, but it did think of the way I share rejection with others and how I kind of communicate with other artists about rejection and being just like open about it. But also I understood that like I'm not alone. Everyone is in the same boat. Even people who I think are like amazing, right? That they're so successful, they have amazing careers. They told me like, yeah, we got rejection all the time. So it kind of puts things into perspective, I think. So yeah, it just helped me just be more open about it, share it with others. And I think it just opens the door to talk to people and help each other in the community, I think, of photographers that we built.
Yeah. In terms of, applying for grants and for programs and all these other things, there's so much work that's involved in doing that. A lot of drudgery, right? But when you're dealing with depression, anxiety, man, that can be a real obstacle to get past in order to make sure that you do the work, that you put it in the mail, that you meet the deadline, that you hit all your P's and Q's. What are the things that you do that help you to be able to do those things?
I think there's periods where I don't submit anything because I kind of okay, I give up. I don't want any connection to the art world, and I try to remove myself. But I always come back because I think it's important to find a way to connect to the community in many ways, right? So I think for me, what helped me is just trying to stay organized, kind of creating a chart with the name of places I'm trying to apply to, and kind of stay on top of it. And also be okay with if the deadline passed and I miss it, it's okay. Mm-hmm. Not to stress over it, and just, I think, apply more than once. Not to give up on a place if you believe that you should be a part of it. So I think having this record of what you submitted and what you submitted really does help kind of keep track of everything. And then maybe you can think of how you can change it for the next time if you didn't get in. But to stay motivated, that's the question. I don't have a real answer and a solution because, it depends on which day you catch me on, right?
Yes.
Some days I'm super eager to submit, and some days I'm I can't do this anymore, right? So I think it's just finding, again, that balance between good and bad, managing your expectations, celebrating the good, being okay with the bad, and just kind of go with the motion of everything. But I think for me, one of the things I've learned kind of lately is how do I make my own opportunities, right? How do I open my own doors? How do I create something for others who are like-minded like me, that have similar passions, right? So almost trying to escape a lot of the traditional organizations and see if I can find other ways to do things, which is challenging in itself, but that's my hope, to kind of find ways to break away from this grind of the art, right? Just the same calls for entry, super expensive, just how do I break from that cycle and bring others with me? So I'm trying. That's kind of my goal for the next, I think, coming years. I think, how do I find these opportunities for myself, and how do I make them happen,
And I think that brings a certain freshness to all the work when you're defining something that is a perfect fit for you, rather than trying to squeeze yourself into some mold that someone else has created. Because oftentimes have gone through that very same process, and there's a lot of resistance on my part. But when I think about it in retrospect, it's because it doesn't fit me, and I'm trying to force it. And as a result, that's why I'm less than enthusiastic in terms of doing all the work. Right. And I'm less than dutiful about, being as exacting as I'm supposed to be with it. But if I'm creating something that I know is perfect for me, it's a hell of a lot easier.
Right. Yeah. That's why I think a lot of younger artists now, the newer generation, I think, of artists come in, they're kind of building their own platforms. They're making their own zines, and social media is a big part of it. I think people are kind of tired a little bit of the gatekeeping, and they just want to try something different. They want to include people. They want to be a part of something celebratory. They don't want to be in competition, I think, with people all the time. These are all our peers. These are friends. We're not competing. So how do we create something that everyone can benefit from? So I think that's why we're seeing more of the indie bookmakers and platforms and magazines. And I think that's really great. And for me, I think that's the future, the art scene, because I think it's going to allow people to be more creative, have diversity in ideas and themes and types of work. I think that would be the most sustainable approach to art, in my opinion. Right?
Because I know it's that kind of work that is exciting me more so than the stuff that I usually see in the galleries, or all that are carefully curated. Not to say that it doesn't have its place and that I don't appreciate what I've seen, in galleries when I go to an opening or something like that. But some of the stuff that I get to see in terms of zines or online, I like being surprised. I like that it's not obvious, that it's a departure from what I'm used to. It challenges me in terms of what I think photography should or can be, or any kind of art form for that matter.
Right. I think it's all about balance. I think traditional is amazing. You see, I made a very traditional book with a very traditional published house, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm not against that. I'm all for galleries. I'm happy to have the organizations. I think it's important to also have other things, because if we're all basing our success if we're in MoMA or not, then we're all screwed.
Oh yeah.
99.9 of us are not going to be there. So that cannot be the way we define success. We have to find success in other ways that make us happy, and we just want to share our work. And I think that's the goal for most artists, is just share the work, celebrate it, engage with other people's work, build something beautiful, build a community, make a change, right? So I think that's why I think that's the future, because, things that are more traditional just have a little bit more of a rigid way of looking at art and the purpose of it also. Yeah, because I think, back in 2013, I was an intern in a gallery somewhere. I won't say names, and she was so kind to look at my work, and I say kind in quotations, and she looked at my work and she's like, yeah, this is never going to sell in a gallery. And she just completely dismissed it. She didn't care why I was making the work, how it really looked, if it touched someone's heart, right? She didn't care. She only saw it on a wall in a gallery, and if someone's going to walk in and buy it. Right. That was the way she valued art. So I think at that moment, I decided that I'm going to make work based on how I want to make work, and I'm not trying to sell it. I'm trying to just make it, right? I'm trying to share it and have it be a part of this canon of art that we have around us. So that's kind of how I try and live my life. But it's hard sometimes.
Yeah. Well, it's a saner way of living your life too.
Yeah, but rejections are still hard. It's not easy, and I think it's okay to say that you get sad and you get upset about it, but it's kind of you have to bounce back and move forward. Yeah, but I think that's the only way. Yeah.
Your husband is an artist himself, so
yes.
Having two artists under the same roof. Tell me about that.
It's actually, I don't know. I feel like for us it's perfect, because I think we're both crazy in our own way, right? And I think the crazy works together, because we can go on a 10-day photo trip, and at the end of it we're exhausted, because we worked, we took photos. He uses 4x5, I use my Mamiya RZ67. So it's we have a lot of equipment, and we drive a lot of miles, but we love it. And I think having that connection and having the combined passion to photography has really, I think, helped us, and we kind of motivate each other to make photos because of it, because we go together. So I think if I had someone who wasn't a photographer, there'd be a lot of guilt, oh, let's go take a drive, I'll take photos, and the other person doesn't have anything to do necessarily. So I think having us kind of both do the same thing but separately in many ways, because we both do very different types of photography, has been very it's fun. It's just who we are. I think it just feels very natural. So it works great for us somehow. Yeah.
That's good to hear. Well, my last question is usually asking people to recommend another photographer. You've already done that. So again, share his name, but also tell us a little more about why this particular photographer resonates so much for you.
So it's Takashi Asumua. He is Japanese. I was able to connect with him a long time ago, like 10 years ago. Just sent him an email thanking him. I'm like, oh my God, I love you. Thank you so much for being an amazing artist. And he was very nice. And he responded, and it was great. I even have his book. I got it signed in Dashwood. I was so happy when I saw it. I think for me, his work is just it's just like simple, but not in a bad way. Like it's simple in the sense that it's not this huge production, right? It's very small, intimate moments of his parents' home, and just like the way he shows in one image this idea of culture and family connection and identity and kind of all of these things together in one photo, and just the lighting and the color, just there's like a harmony in everything. And I feel like in every photo he really tells a story of who he is as a person. So I just find his work just so interesting and inspirational, and just beautiful. Just to look at it is just aesthetically really amazing. So I really recommend to look at his work especially if you're a still life photographer. I think it's a must, at least to know the work. I think his work is just really, it touched my heart, and I just want to be him in a way,
Yeah,
I just want to do that for other people, just the way that his work made me feel. I just want to make other people feel that. So hopefully I can do that with the work and the book. But yeah, he's been very inspirational for me. Yeah.
Well, Dana, thank you so much for your time and for sharing your wonderful story with us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm honored to be a part of this.
Thanks to Dana for joining us. You can learn more about Dana and her work by visiting at her website at danastirling.com. That's Stirling spelled Stirling, danastirling.com. And if you're a fan of our work, you can write reviews on whatever service you use to listen to podcasts on, and share a favorite episode on social networks, be it X, Facebook, or Instagram. Remember to use the hashtag #TheCandidFrame. You can also support us financially via Patreon. And if you want to make a one-time donation to the show, you can do so now by visiting buymeacoffee.com/TheCandidFrame. Thanks to Helen Wagner for her recent contribution. We've relaunched our newsletter using Substack. Sign up today and receive regular updates on all things related to TCF. And if you can't find every episode of the show on whatever service you use to listen to podcasts on, download the Candid Frame app for Apple iOS and Android. And because of your generosity, it's free to download and use. No additional purchases are required. The Candid Frame's audio engineer is Martin Taylor, who you can find at theothermartintaylor.com. The show's senior producer is Cynthia Parker. And this is Ibarian X, and this is The Candid Frame.